Tubing and swimming in small streams significantly impact the biology and the chemicals that are present in these environments.
Hello, I'm Sophie Robner from the American Chemical Society. Welcome to this media briefing from ACS Fall 2023. With Labor Day approaching, many people are preparing to go tubing and swimming at local streams and rivers. These delightful summertime activities seem innocuous, but do they have an impact on these waterways? Today, scientists report preliminary results from the first holistic study of this question, which shows that recreation can alter the chemical and microbial fingerprint of streams. However, the environmental and health ramifications are as yet unknown. To tell us more about this, we're joined today by Karsten Prase and Nora Hamdan from Johns Hopkins University. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for having us.
Where did you get the idea to do this project?
This idea actually started with a conversation that I had with our collaborator, James Ranville, who was at the Colorado School of Mines during the previous ACS meeting. Actually, we had coffee together, and he lives in Colorado, where the stream is located that we ended up investigating. And he had, over the past years, witnessed that more and more people are using the stream for recreational activities, such as tubing and swimming. And he's very interested in things like metals and nanoparticles in the environment. And he knows that I do a lot of work on chemicals, such as pharmaceuticals, personal care products. So we were basically discussing that it would be very interesting to look into like how these anthropogenic impact or activities are impacting these streams, because there is basically, at this point at least, almost nothing known about this.
Can you briefly describe how you and your collaborators studied this topic?
So Dr. Ranville at Colorado School of Mines took spatial and temporal samples on days and locations with human activity, specifically float tubing during Labor Day weekend, and little to no human activity on a day after Labor Day weekend. He sent us some of those samples for the organic analysis, which is looking at pharmaceuticals and personal care products and such like that. His graduate student, Carmen Villarreal, worked on the inorganic analysis like metals and nanoparticles. And she used inductively coupled plasma mass spectrometry and microbial analysis, which is looking at the microbes and biome of the creek. For the organic data analysis, I used liquid chromatography mass spectrometry, which is an analysis technique to separate and identify unknown and known compounds. So what we can do with this instrument is blow these compounds into tinier fragments to elucidate their structure and chemical properties. And then we can find out what really is in these samples.
What did you find out?
So we found that, specifically in the microbial analysis, Carmen Villarreal found that the biome composition changes as a function of human recreational activity in the creek. There are shifts in microbiome composition indicate measurable human impacts. Carmen also found that heavy recreation days have elevated major and trace metals, including lead and zinc, and humans contribute significantly to resuspending sediment, resuspending metals in sediment. Through inorganic data analysis, I found that compounds such as cocaine, phthalates, and compounds that are commonly associated with pharmaceuticals like fexofenadine, gabapentin, lamotrigine, even lidocaine, they're all present in the stream through humans introducing them into the environment, specifically like UV filters, things that are in our sunscreen like avobenzone and oxybenzone, which we know can harm the environment through just them being present and impacting aquatic organisms through their toxicity.
What are the implications of these findings?
So for the microbiome, the microbiome changes a lot during heavy recreational days. We can see that through Carmen Villarreal's data. The organic data analysis leads to the conclusion that we really don't know the effects of these compounds. What we did was we took all of our high confidence level compounds in the organic data analysis side, and we fed it through EPA's comparison toxicology dashboard, CompTox dashboard. And the Comtox dashboard basically spits out all of this information on the environmental fates and exposure and toxicology of the specific compounds when it comes to different organisms in the environment. And what we found is that a large majority of these compounds, we don't have data on their chronic aquatic toxicity. We don't have data on their persistence and their mobility in the environment. What we do know is that most of these compounds have low bioaccumulative potential, which means that they won't build up in the organism's bodies over time. But we also are lacking a lot of information on these compounds. And we found that out using EPA's Comtox dashboard.
What will you do next?
We are thinking of sampling again later this year in Labor Day weekend. We're thinking of collecting more samples and doing some more statistical analysis to really make sure that humans are significantly impacting the stream. Clear Creek in Colorado is a stream that's significantly used for anthropogenic activity, so we want to make sure that we can get as much sample data as possible. So we are thinking of resampling again and doing this analysis again.
As a result of this study, what advice would you give the public?
I recommend not peeing in rivers. Most of these compounds that are introduced into the stream are results of washing off on the body, like their sunscreens and all of their personal care products, like their fragrances. If you spritz anything before you go into the stream, that'll all be washed off into the stream. If you urinate in the river or if you sweat in the river, all of those xenobiotic metabolites can also get into the water through there. So try and not to go to the bathroom when you're in the water. I also recommend wearing mineral sunscreen. That way you don't have organic contaminants like avobenzone and oxybenzone, which have high implications for the environment. And they can be very toxic to aquatic organisms. So wearing mineral sunscreen that has zinc and titanium and aluminum in it will definitely help protect the environment.
If I can, I don't know if I can add. I mean, I think people should just be aware of, typically when we tube in smaller rivers that are kind of like further upstream, like very small rivers, like these are sensitive ecosystems that are not used to obviously having people swimming in them. So I think just people being aware of that they have an impact on these rivers. And I'm not saying people shouldn't tube, but as Noor mentioned, I think thinking about the use of chemicals, maybe also what are you taking into the water? What are you spilling in the water? Can just have implications for the ecosystem that you're in. So I think people should just be aware of these aspects.
Thank you both for sharing your research with us.
Thank you very much for having us.
Thank you.
Be sure to check out our other media briefings for ACS Fall 2023, which will be posted throughout the meeting at www.acs.org/ACS Fall 2023 briefings.